بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له هو يتولى الصالحين، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فالكلام موصول حول هدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الصيام. وحينما بدأنا في هذه الفصول من كتاب زاد المعاد، شرعنا في تأسيس العبادة المذكورة بالأسس التي وضعها العلماء استنباطا من النصوص، وذلك لتسهيل الفهم. والفقهاء رحمهم الله بوبوا لأصناف العبادات وجعلوا فصولا يذكرون فيها الشروط والأركان والواجبات والمستحبات والمكروهات والمحرمات والمفسدات وهكذا. فمن أجل أن نفهم صلب الموضوع لا بد أن نؤسس هذا التأسيس في عقول السامعين حتى نفهم ما يجب علينا وما يستحب لنا وما يكره منا وما يحرم علينا وما يشترط وهكذا. وهذا في الصيام. وقد ذكرنا أن الصيام يجب على، كما نقل الإجماع أهل العلم منهم سيد سابق رحمه الله في فقه السنة، أن العلماء أجمعوا أن الصيام يجب على المسلم العاقل البالغ الصحيح المقيم، وللنساء خاصة، ليس على حيض ولا نفاس. فهذه 6. The scholars, and as we have come into the chapter regarding fasting, as we usually do and as we always do whenever we come across a new chapter in Zadul-Ma'ad, of course, keep in mind here that Zadul-Ma'ad is written in a way that is very different or somewhat different than the other books that may refer to these subjects. So he's written this book, and it has a cluster of all kinds of things about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it has issues of fiqh, issues of history and seerah, issues of medicine, anything that has to do with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's written this book in a way that the companions radiyallahu anhum would have understood and seen and looked at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah. What do I mean by that? The scholars of fiqh, when they went to take worship, take particular issues, in order to be able to understand and in order for them to be able to teach it in a way that is definite, definitive, meaning that this is this is the bare minimum, this is the extra, this is preferable. So they separated and categorized different things into different categories. We have the conditions, we have the pillars, we have obligations, we have things that are preferable, we have things that invalidate, things that are prohibited, things that are disliked and discouraged, etc. So we can make a list. How do we come up with this? Well, the fuqaha examined all of the narrations, all of the verses, everything having to do with that particular act of worship, and looked for these patterns that kind of make themselves obvious and manifest themselves in such a practice. And this is what is referred to as a sabr. A sabr in the science of fiqh, or is that an individual takes all of the verses, all of the narrations that they have, and they put them all together and then start to look for patterns. The companions, radiallahu anhum, most of the time would not differentiate in their actions and in their adherence, would not differentiate between something obligatory and mustahab. If the Prophet ﷺ did it, we will do it. Right? Yes, the fuqaha of the companions, the muftiin of the companions, Abu Hurairah, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Amr, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, etc., they knew these categorizations and they alluded to them. However, when they would hear something or see something that the Prophet ﷺ did, they would do it. When he would not do something or discourage it, they would leave it alone. So Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, Ibn Al-Qayyim, he authored his book Zadul-Ma'ad in this way. Very little do we find that he differentiates between that which is wajib, that which is mustahab. He just mentions the Prophet ﷺ, he used to pray like this. This is how he prayed. This is what he did. We don't find that categorization. Because again, the subject of the book and the topic of the book is not the fiqh, necessarily a book of fiqh in the traditional sense. It's a book about the Prophet ﷺ. But in order for us to understand these chapters properly, we have to go through this categorization in order to be able to understand and retain what it is we are learning. To make sure that we're able to differentiate between, for instance, fasting, a fast which is acceptable, a fast which is preferable, a fast which is invalid, etc., in order for us to know where we stand with regards to these issues. So the scholars have all agreed that fasting is obligatory upon an individual that has 6 conditions, 6 traits. The first is that a person is Muslim. What does that mean, Muslim? Does this mean that Islam's obligations are only obligatory upon Muslims, that non-Muslims are not obliged to and compelled to follow the Quran and Sunnah? Yes, of course they are. All of humanity is. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا. The Prophet ﷺ was sent to everybody, and everybody is obliged to follow his command. But what the scholars mean when they say fasting is obligatory upon Muslims, it doesn't mean that non-Muslims are not obliged to fast. What it means is that non-Muslims are not commanded to fast at first. The first thing they're commanded to do is accept Islam, right? Then we will tell them about prayer. Then we will tell them about zakat. Then we will tell them about fasting. We don't come to them and say, well, at least fast. No, at least pray. You have to establish that worship on a bedrock and a foundation of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So when we say it is obligatory upon Muslims, what is meant is they are commanded immediately to fast. Whereas someone who has not entered Islam is first commanded to enter Islam, right? The second is that a person is sane, and we discussed what is meant by sanity in the legislative sense. Al-Baligh, which is a person who is of pubescent age, and we discussed what the age of puberty is. We said the latest is 15 years old, and there are other traits that a person may exhibit that articulate that a person has reached the age of puberty, and we discussed that. The next is as-sahih, someone who is healthy and not ill. and that's what we'll discuss tonight, inshallah. We also discussed al-muqim, somebody who is a resident and not a traveler. And we mentioned the opinion of Ibn Al-Qayyim, the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam, the way of the companions, radiyallahu anhum, for the most part, in understanding traveling. And that is that traveling is when a person is not a resident. And when a person is a resident, he is not traveling. So a person, as long as they are in a land that they are not living and residing in, they don't have a house, they don't have, they don't live there, then the individual is a traveler. If a person is passing through, they're staying in a hotel, this person is a traveler. A person goes for Umrah, and they're staying in a hotel. Are they a resident there? No, they are a traveler. And so the rulings of travel apply to them. If they were to rent an apartment and stay there, if they were to do the things which would make a person a resident, then now they will have the ruling of a person who is a resident. Say, well, I lived there for a while, right? Even if it's only 2 or 3 months, then I'm living there. But if a person is passing through, then a person is not considered to be a resident, therefore they are a traveler, right? What constitutes travel? What constitutes travel is that a person have the intention of traveling and leave the boundaries of their city. That is what traveling is. There's a narration in Al-Musannaf, I believe Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, that Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu had left Baghdad, had left his city, capital city in Iraq, Al-Basra, and he had traveled outside. Now, he was with his companions, his entourage, his people that were traveling with him, Amirul Mu'mineen, radiyallahu anhu, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And as they reached the outskirts of the city, right? As they reached the outskirts of the city, they passed by a khussa. A khussa is a hut. A hut. What we call in Palestine dialect is khushabiyya, right? A little hut, small. And he said, لولا هذه الخصة لا جمعنا الصلاة. He said, when they reached this part of the town, they were on their way out, and then they stopped for salah. And he saw a small hut for one of the people living on the outskirts of the city. And he said, had it not been for this hut, we would have joined our prayers. What does that mean? It means that this hut is part of the city. So he didn't leave the city yet until he passes that. This is how Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu understood that. And so, when is a person traveling? Let's take an example from where we are here, right? Let's say I want to travel. Would I join my prayers before I leave my house? No. I can break my fast before I leave my house. That's a different topic. Fasting and prayer have two different rulings in this regard. But I would still make my prayer on time and not join the prayers, and I would make them in full. But let's say now I get on the highway and I leave the boundaries of Chicago area, right? Now I'm traveling. Once I leave those boundaries, now I will shorten my prayers and I will join my prayers. Even if I'm only a few miles out of the boundaries of my city. That's not what's important. What's important is that I've left my city with the intention of traveling, and the destination in mind is a destination that would constitute travel, right? Now I will shorten my prayers regardless of the distance. So some of the scholars in the different madhahib, they mention 80 kilometers, 90 kilometers. However, mentioning a particular distance is, for the most part, not very precise. Why? Because if a person is at 79 kilometers or at 78 kilometers, with a person at 80 kilometers, 1 kilometer ahead of them, they can see them, right? On a clear day. That person would shorten his prayers, and the person at 79 kilometers would pray in full? No, right? They're all traveling. So the point here is that traveling is based on the intention and leaving the boundaries of the city, right? That is traveling. The sixth and final characteristic of a person who needs to fast applies only to women, only to females, and that is that they not be in a state of menstruation or postpartum. Postpartum and menstruation is all the same ruling in all of fiqh except in 3 issues, and this is not one of those 3 issues, right? So postpartum and menstruation, they go hand in hand in all issues of fiqh except for 3 issues. Fasting is not one of them. So if a woman is on menstruation or she's in her cycle or having postpartum, which is after giving birth and nifas, then she is exempted from fasting and she would make up her fast. So this is the kind of person whom fasting is obligatory upon, right? So let's mention them. There's 6, 5 for men and 6 for females. Number 1, a person is Muslim. We mentioned what that means. Number 2, that they are sane. We discussed that. Number 3, that the person is of pubescent age, al-bulugh, right? And we said the latest a person will reach bulugh is 15 years old. That's the absolute latest. Number 4 is that a person is healthy. Number 5, that a person is a resident. And number 6, which applies only to females, that there not be any in a state of menstruation or postpartum, right? Now, what is meant by a sahih? That a person is healthy. Does any of us have 100% health all the time? No, right? Unless you're a young man or unless you're, right? We're going to have some, the older you get, the more you start to feel that. But the point is that, and, I'm not that old, but I've definitely felt it. And the point is that person is not at 100% health. What's meant by health is that a person is not affected by fasting. That's what's meant by health here in this context, right? Let's say I have some kind of rash. Am I at 100% health? No. Am I healthy to where fasting is obligatory? Yes, right? Because I need to put some cream on this rash or something like that. It doesn't affect my fast. If I fast or if I don't fast, it will be the same result with regards to that particular ailment, right? However, there's 3 instances. What's meant by health is health with regards to fasting. So when the scholars say fasting is obligatory upon those who are of health, it means that your fast will not affect that particular issue, right? That's what's meant. It's important for us to understand that. Now, the same thing would go for Hajj, for instance, right? Hajj is obligatory upon a person who is able. What does that mean? That means your Hajj will not affect your health. You won't get more sick or not become better or what have you. This is what's meant by health. So each category has its different categorization. So there's 3 instances in which fasting would not be obligatory. Now notice the wording I'm saying. Obligatory, binding, wajib. Meaning if you break your fast, then you are being sinful. You're not doing something that is obligatory. But it doesn't mean that you can't fast, okay? Just like someone who is traveling, it doesn't mean that they can't fast. It just means it's not wajib. It's not obligatory, okay? If a person has an illness, if a person has an ailment, an illness, and if they fast, it will either, one, make them more ill. Number two, it will stop them from healing. Or number three, they have to take some medicine that would break their fast for this illness. This person is not considered to be of health, to where fasting is obligatory. Right? So three things. Number one, the person will become more sick, more ill by fasting. It will hurt them. Number two, their recovery will be delayed because of fasting. Or number three, they have to take some kind of medicine or something, even if it's food, right, that makes a person break their fast. And if they don't take this thing, it will either make them more sick or it will delay their recovery. These three things exempt a person from having to fast. Let's talk about the first one. Let's review them real quick. I want to make sure these things are sticking. Number one, the person, what's the first one? They become more sick by fasting. Number two, come on guys, I know them. I want you guys to know them. Their recovery will be delayed. Number three, they have to take something that would break their fast, and this would either delay their recovery or make them more sick. Right? So three things. So let's discuss the first one. We said the first one was it will increase their illness. What's that mean? Well, let's say a person has something like a very well-known one, like diabetes, for instance, right? Okay, diabetes is an interesting thing because may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal those of us who are afflicted with this calamity. It's interesting because a person's body is not like a machine. There's different days. You have up days and down days, right? So certain days you might find that you're able to fast, and other days it will be harmful if you fast, right? Insulin shot, does that break your fast? Huh? No. Is insulin food? Is it food? Does it nourish? No. It doesn't break your fast. The only thing that breaks your fast is something that takes the place of food. What takes the place of food? Like an IV, right? An IV that you go to the hospital, you dehydrated or something, they give you an IV. This will break your fast because it takes the place of food, right? However, does insulin take the place of food? No. Does vitamins or a vaccine take the place of food? Does a nicotine patch take the place of food? No. Does a suppository take the place of food? A suppository is medicine that's inserted via the rectum. If a person has an upset stomach, they can't take orally, they take it by the rectum. Does this take the place of food? No. These things don't break your fast. What breaks your fast is something that goes into the jawf, right? And takes the place of food or drink, right? And from this we take that, yes, smoking breaks your fast, right? Because it goes into the jawf and it goes through the mouth and the nose. But what about something like an inhaler? Some people have an inhaler. Does that break your fast? No, it doesn't break your fast. Because it's a very minute amount, just like if you're in the shower and it's hot and there's steam, is that going to break your fast? No, right? So when we say you have to take medicine, we're speaking about medicine that would break your fast, not any medicine, okay? We'll get to that. The point here is like, for instance, a diabetic, they can't just take insulin alone. Sometimes they need to eat something, right? Sometimes they need to drink some glass of orange juice, or they need to take something to increase their blood sugar, what have you. This would break your fast, but that's not something that happens every day. Some days they may need that, other days they may not. So if a person has something like diabetes and they're able to have suhoor and not be affected by their fast that particular day, then they fast. And if they're unable to fast that particular day, something comes up where they need to break their fast, they break their fast, right? So we have, number one, a person is hurt by his fasting. If you are hurt, if you fast and it will physically hurt you, it will hurt you in the sense of it will make you more sick, then it is haram for a person to fast in this case. Right? If a person were to fast and it would be detrimental to their health to fast, then it is haram for them to fast. Okay? Let's say even if they're not ill, but something happens where they get ill through the day. Let's say a person is working as a roofer on the roof in the sun, okay? And that particular day, they start getting a heat stroke. Would they continue fasting in that case? No. Now they need to break their fast, right? But maybe he works 25 days out of the month and that doesn't happen. No problem. But if it does happen, then it is wajib to break your fast in that case. It is not permissible to fast if fasting harms you. It is haram to fast if fasting harms you. Okay? Number two, if a person has an illness, if they have an illness and fasting delays their recovery, right? Our brother brought up an interesting one, which is like the flu. That's an interesting illness because when a person has a fever, when a person has all of these symptoms of a flu, right? If they fast, they could probably make it through the day and they won't be more sick. However, it will delay their recovery, correct? Because if you have a fever, if you have an illness like the flu, you treat the symptoms, you have to drink water, you have to eat, you have to do these things to hasten your recovery. So if a person, if they fast, it will delay their recovery, then they don't have to fast. But is it permissible for them to fast? Yes. Is it better for them to fast? Well, that depends on the situation and depends on the severity of the illness, etc. But in general, it is better for them to not fast and hasten their recovery. Number three, if they need something, the fasting doesn't affect their health, it doesn't affect their illness, it doesn't increase their illness or delay their recovery, but what happens? They have to take something for another illness that's not included, and this thing constitutes that they break their fast, like some kind of pills that they have to take or something of that sort, then they do not have to fast in that case. Right? They do not have to fast in that case. Now, so as we're discussing these things, it's right, Ramadan is right around the corner. And these things are going to come into play very soon for all of us. If anyone has anything that they don't understand, and that's in general in all the classes that we always mention, if you have a question or you didn't understand what I have mentioned, then you should ask immediately as we're going through the class, inshallah. So these are this is the criteria for a person for it to be obligatory upon a person to fast. The same thing goes with traveling. If a person travels and fasts, and fasting makes them sick, while they're traveling, is it permissible for them to fast? No, it is not permissible. ليس من البر الصيام في السفر يقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال ذلك لمن كان مغمى عليه من حر الشمس ومن عناء السفر فجاء إليه وقال ليس من البر الصيام في السفر لكن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصوم في السفر وكان غيره من الصحابة يصوم معه وقد جاء في صحيح مسلم أن الصحابة قالوا سافرنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في يوم حار يضع أحدنا يده على رأسه من شدة الحر ليس منا أحد صائم إلا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعبد الله ابن رواحة رضي الله عنه فدل هذا على أن الصيام جائز لمن وجد قوة وإن وجد مشقة فليس عليه ضير لكن إذا كان الصيام يؤذي الإنسان كان الإنسان يمرض أو يغمى عليه أو ما أشبه ذلك فإنه يحرم عليه حينئذ الصيام في السفر وكذلك للمريض الأمر سواء كما ذكرنا. It's permissible for a person to fast while he is traveling or she is traveling. The companions radiallahu anhum, Abdullah ibn Umar mentioned in Sahih Muslim that we were accompanying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in travel, and it was such an extremely hot day that we were holding our heads from the intensity of the heat. None of us was fasting on that day except for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abdullah ibn Rawaha radiyallahu anhu. So we understand from this that fasting is permissible while you are traveling, but it is not obligatory. Even if a person is fine, they don't find any hardship in fasting whatsoever. While they're traveling, they still have the permission to break their fast. However, is it better for them to fast or better for them to break their fast? If it is not harmful, it's better for them to fast. Why? Because fasting during Ramadan with the rest of the Muslims altogether is obviously better. Plus the time is a virtuous time, right? Now, now fasting has two pillars. We've mentioned now the criteria upon whom is fasting binding, obligatory. We mentioned 6 traits, right? Let's mention them. Number 1, Muslim. Number 2, well, let's not go in out of order because we're going to get confused. Number 1, Muslim. Number 2, sanity. Number 3, puberty. Number 4, health. Number 5, resident. And number 6, a person for females, that they're not in a state of menstruation or postpartum. And we said what's meant by health is that fasting does not make you more sick or delay your recovery. Or number 3, that you have to take something that would otherwise break your fast. Okay? So we've mentioned some things that is common, and we will get into what will break your fast in a few, inshallah. 9 minutes, okay. I thought she said it was 9 o'clock. All right. I forgot my glasses. I can't see anything. طيب. The pillars of fasting. أركان الصيام. ركنان. الركن الأول النية والركن الثاني أن يمسك عن المفطرات من طلوع الفجر إلى غياب الشمس. والمفطرات سيأتي ذكرها إن شاء الله. فالركن الأول النية. ما المقصود بالنية؟ أن يبيت الإنسان نيته للصيام، أن يبيت الإنسان نيته بالصيام. يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما في حديث حفصة عند أبي داود والترمذي والنسائي، قال صلى الله عليه وسلم: من لم يجمع الصيام قبل الفجر فلا صيام له. والمقصود أن له نية بالصيام، يعني يقول إن شاء الله سأصوم اليوم أو سأصوم غدا، فهذا هو المقصود. The first pillar is intention. What's meant by intention is that an individual has the intention to fast before Fajr starts. Before Fajr. Right? So let's say, for instance, an individual goes to sleep early and they don't know if Ramadan is tomorrow morning. Right? They didn't hear. They don't know. And they didn't have an intention to fast. And they woke up at Fajr, but they woke up after the adhan of Fajr. Do they have to make up that day? Yes. Right? Okay. Let's say an individual says, I'm not sure if tomorrow is Ramadan. If tomorrow is Ramadan, then I plan to fast. And then they wake up at Fajr. Is that going to be valid? Yes. لأنه اشترط. نعم. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has not made the conscious intention to fast before Fajr, then their fast is not valid, is not complete. The second thing that will break a person's, the second pillar of fasting is that an individual refrain from the things that break their fast from the break of dawn, from Fajr, until the sunset. Okay? Those are the two pillars of fasting. Easy. Salah has 14 pillars. Right? Fasting has 2 pillars. Now, what are the things that break a person's fast? You can memorize them. They are 6 things. 6 things that will break your fast. Anything outside of these 6 things that we are going to mention will not break your fast. Okay, so you will know based on these things that your fast is valid or is not valid. The first thing is eating or drinking. Al-aklu wa-shurbu ذاكرا فهذا يفسد الصوم. الثالث القيء عمدا. الرابع والخامس الحيض والنفاس. والسادس الجماع. هذه الأمور تفسد الصيام، وثم أمور اختلف العلماء فيها. نعم. نعم، هذا سؤال قد أورده الفقهاء رحمهم الله. هل يجب، يسأل عمنا، هل يجب على الإنسان أن يجدد نيته في كل يوم أم يكفيه نية واحدة للشهر أجمعه؟ الصواب أنه يكفيه نية واحدة للشهر كله، لكنه يستحب له ويحسن به أن يعقد النية في كل ليلة قبل بزوغ الفجر. نعم. فالصيام صحيح، قال أنا أريد أن أصوم رمضان، خلاص يكفيه هذا. لكن إن كان يجدد كل يوم نيته فهذا أفضل وهذا أقرب وخروج من الخلاف. So we have 6 things that will break a person's fast. Number 1 and 2 are eating or drinking anything knowingly. الأكل والشرب عمدا. عمدا يعني ذاكرا، يكون الإنسان يدري أنه صائم ويشرب أو يأكل، فهذا يفسد الصوم. وكذلك ما جرى مجرى الأكل والشرب أو ما كان من النخاع أو الفم. كذلك الثالث القيء عمدا. القيء عمدا، يعني إذا كان القيء بلا إرادة فهذا لا يفسد الصوم. والرابع والخامس الحيض والنفاس، وقد ذكرنا أن الحيض والنفاس هما سواء في الحكم في كل شيء في أبواب الفقه إلا في أمور ثلاثة، وهما ويحملان نفس الحكم في هذا الباب، في باب الصيام. قال السادس الجماع، والمقصود بالجماع الجماع ذاكرا، فإن كان ناسيا فالراجح أنه لا يجب عليه قضاء الصوم ولا يفطر صومه، لما سنذكره من قول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في هذا الباب. So we will list these 6 things that will break a person's fast, and then we will expound upon them inshallah next week as we've run out of time. The first and second is that a person eat or drink something knowingly, meaning I know I'm fasting and I intend to eat or drink something. This will break a person's fast, right? This will break a person's fast, and that issue of knowingly goes through all of the issues of the things that will break a person's fast, as we'll get into inshallah, except for menstruation and postpartum. The third thing, those are 2 things, right? Eating or drinking, or anything that takes their place, or anything that goes in the way that they go. And we'll mention that next week. The third thing is making yourself self-induced vomiting. If you vomit because you're sick, it doesn't break your fast. But if you make yourself vomit, then it will break your fast. 4 and 5 is menstruation and postpartum. And number 6 is intercourse. And again, purposefully. And we will expound upon these next week, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.